What's going on, everybody? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with another fight breakdown this weekend. Regis Prograis is going to be facing off against Jack Catterall, right? And this is going to be for the WBO international title. Not a full title. The WBO title is being held by Teofimo Lopez at the moment. All right, but this is probably one of the better non-title fights that you can have at 140 at the moment. We got a former two-time champion in Regis Prograis, who also was a finalist in the World Boxing Super Series when they had the tournaments back then, against Jack Catterall, who arguably beat the former undisputed champion and Josh Taylor, who never been champion because he lost to Josh Taylor in the first fight, and then the rematch was which was recent. It wasn't for a title. Okay, so Jack Catterall has fought at a championship level, but hasn't actually won a title yet. All right, so it's a good fight for a non-title fight. All right, and I think whoever wins this fight should be on their way to possibly fighting for that WBO strap that Teofimo Lopez is now holding. All right. So let's talk about the two fighters. They're both southpaws. Okay, Regis Prograis, 35 years old. He's gonna be 36 soon, so he's getting up there in age. All right, 35, 36. He's as far as dimensions, both roughly around the same height. I think they're within an inch as far as height. I think Catterall has a couple of inches in reach on him. All right, but Catterall has the youth advantage. He's 31 years old. He just turned 31 a few months ago. So he is younger, he is fresher, and he's actually been more active. I think he's fought already twice already this year. All right, so he's the more active fighter right now. But Regis has been pretty active since going over there to Matchroom, since he's been a Matchroom fighter, but he hasn't fought this year yet. The last fight he's been in was his loss against Devin Haney. Okay, they both turned pro in 2012. Okay, they both have around the same fights. Regis Prograis with 31 fights and Jack Catterall with 30 fights. Prograis has 29 wins with 24 knockouts, so a very high knockout ratio, especially against top quality fighters, against Jack Catterall's, who is 29 wins, but only 13 knockouts there and the one loss. All right. Regis Prograis has the two losses, one to Josh Taylor and one to Devin Haney. All right. So when it comes to the experience, I would have to give it to Regis Prograis because he's been in there with a lot of really, really good fighters over the years. You know, I started really paying attention to him when he stopped Joel Diaz in a couple of rounds, and since then things really took off for him, especially in that first run towards that, that unification match against Josh Taylor. You know, he beat Joel Diaz. He's beaten Julius Ndago, Terry Flanagan, Kyle Relic. You know, he's been in there with Josh Taylor, obviously. And he's been in there with guys like Iron Red Cash, Jose Cepeda, Devin Haney. So, he's been in there with a lot of guys, and he's been in there with a lot of southpaws. And that's a key thing. And that's a major thing when it comes to experience here, because he lost to a southpaw, Josh Taylor, but it was a very, very close fight. All right. But he lost to Devin Haney. And I think one of his toughest fights was against Danielito Surreal, which was right before the Haney fight, which is another long, tall, long, rangy type of fighter. All right, that wasn't a southpaw. Him and Devin Haney weren't southpaw fighters. But he's fought a lot of southpaws here. You got Cepeda, you got Red Catch, you got Terry Flanagan, you got Julius Ndongo, you got Josh Taylor. So he's been in there with a lot of top, southpaw, notable, not top, but notable southpaw fighters that's been in there with a lot of fighters. All right, and Jack Catterall, when it comes to the experience, there's not really many standout names in there. Yes, he's fought against O'Hara Davis, back when O'Hara was closer to his prime, only had suffered that one loss to Josh Taylor. He's been in there with Josh Taylor twice. All right, we know that. And he's been in there with Jorge Linares last year. Linares is way, way past it at this point. But, he's been in there. He's been in with some fighters, but now on a level with Regis. But the advantage that Catterall has right now is that he's coming off. He's younger, and he's beaten he's fought Josh Taylor, and in my opinion, I think he did better against Josh Taylor in both fights than Regis did in his one fight. And even though that fight was really close, I just thought that Jack Catterall, I personally believe that Jack Catterall won both fights against Josh Taylor. I think the first fight, you know, he won. I thought he won more rounds. I thought he won the fight 7 rounds to 5, and including the knockdown. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to the judges. Okay, and in the second fight, I thought he improved in the fight, and I also thought that Josh Taylor, stayed at the division a little too long. I think he's a little drained. I don't think he's the same fighter, but he still put on a good fight against Jack Catterall. But Catterall did better and improved in that rematch. All right, but we'll talk more about that shortly. So let's talk about the styles. Again, they're both southpaws, but they're both completely different fighters. When I look at Catterall, I kind of think of him as a southpaw version of Caleb Plant. Mainly fights out of that Philly shell. Good defender, good fundamentals. Kind of slick. Good counterpuncher, good hand speed, moves extremely well, very quick, light feet. And again, it's the defense, it's the head movements, the upper body movement, just getting out of the way of the shots and knowing how to use range. Has a very, very good jab, how knows how to keep fighters on the end of his jab, and just controlling distance, just a good, solid, rangy fighter. And that's what Regis have struggled with in his career. So I think Jack Catterall has the tools, has the fundamentals to be able to keep a guy like Regis Prograis on the outside and use that straight left hand and dominate and outbox him from the outside. He definitely has what it takes to win the fight, stylistically, because we seen what he was able to do against Josh Taylor in both of those fights and other opponents he's been in there with. Not a big puncher, but I think he's a respectable puncher. I think in the rematch with Josh Taylor, he showed that he can initiate the action, you know what I mean, and really be the ring general, not just being the counter puncher and just waiting on a counter. He really initiated in the rematch as opposed in the first fight where he's just focused more on the counter. I seen him throw more combinations in the rematch. I seen him attack the body more in the rematch. So I think in this fight here, he wanted to not just show that he can outscore against Josh, but he can actually rough him up and hurt him at times, which is what he did in that rematch. I think when it comes to Jack Catterall, and this is why I kind of completely comparing him to Caleb Plant, is because when Caleb Plant starts to tire out a little bit, the defense falters a bit. You know what I mean? It's easier to get closer to him and throw those exchanges. Pressuring Jack is the best way to go. You want to slow him down and get him in the exchanges. Not saying that he can defend on the inside, because he could in close mid range, but he's not. The defense is not as tight as when he has range. I think also, like most fighters, sometimes you got a good jab, you got a straight left hand, sometimes you overextend. And Regis Prograis, who's been in there with a lot of southpaw fighters, he can counter guys with the straight left, or overhand left when he's fighting other southpaw. So it's not like it's just like a righty fighting another righty. When you have a southpaw fighting a southpaw, you're gonna try to counter, off the straight left hands that's coming at you, or the jab or that's coming at you. And that's what Regis is going to be looking to do, especially when Jack kind of overextends sometimes and leave his jab out there too long or whatever. Um, but Jack is overall very good at controlling distance. Sometimes he keeps his back against the ropes. Now he can defend in the corner or while he's in ropes. He could defend, but sometimes that's where you get him. That's where Josh Taylor was able to do the best work when they were on the actual inside. And Josh can just throw his flurries, because Jack, even though he can move his body and stuff and use his hand to catch some of those shots, some of them is going to get through. You know what I mean? And when you're throwing hooks, when you're a guy that likes to roll punches in the Philly shell and you're leaning over and stuff like that, you can lean right into a lead hook if you're not careful. Okay. So I don't see many like flaws with Jack Catterall. You know, again, the feet are very good. You know what I mean? I think at times he just backs himself straight into the ropes, but outside of that, he's still a very good defender for the most part until he starts to fade a little bit. And I think in the Josh Taylor fight, both fights, that's when we seen Josh at his best when Jack started to slow down just a little bit, especially in the first fight, because Josh won like almost all of the remaining five fights or 5 rounds. I didn't go back to watch the fight, but I remember Josh being in control and in most of the second half of that fight. All right. When it comes to Regis Prograis, not as fundamental, the fundamentals are not as good. Regis Prograis, what he succeeds in and what his strengths are is his punching power, his counter punching, his speed, and his reflexes. All right, very good head upper body movement overall, but very good head movement. Okay, slipping shots and countering is what he does, especially when a fighter steps too far in range. He doesn't have long arms, okay, and he doesn't have the quickest feet. So he's good at catching opponents off their mistakes and taking advantage of them. He's a very good counter puncher. Okay. And he has that reflexes to be able to capitalize and slipping and getting out of the way and countering. Um, I think Regis Prograis is a good long range fighter when it comes to taking advantages of the mistakes his opponents make by stepping in too close. When he's fighting a fighter like a Zaria, like a Devin Haney, or even maybe like a Jack Catterall, all right, guys that are very good at fighting rangy fights and staying outside of range and scoring from the outside, that's when Regis Prograis is a little bit in trouble. You know why? Because he doesn't have the quickest feet, you know? Um, and then when he's forced to step in, now he's stepping in and running into shots on his way in. Okay. Another thing with Regis Prograis, um, there are some flaws there. I mean, overall, like offensively, from the outside, he has a good right, left hand. You know, he has a good left hand, a straight left hand right down the middle, or overhand left. He has a good right hook. Okay, but when he's on the inside, he's not as good. When he lost to Josh Taylor just outworked him on the inside. He was able to handle himself. But one thing I've noticed about Regis Prograis, and it's something that really annoys me, and it's been annoying me even watching some full film study, and I don't think I've ever brought this up before in a breakdown. Regis Prograis has a bladed stance. And as long as he's fighting, if you notice, if you just take 5 minutes and watch any fight of his, when his opponent steps in and they're exchanging and throwing combos and whatever on the inside, and Regis exchanges with them. Okay, it could be with Josh Taylor, it can be with Devin Haney or whoever. Regis is always in that same bladed stance. I noticed that, and I never noticed it before until this week. Regis does not square up at all. So he gives his opponent an advantage on him by not having great balance, because now he's throwing combinations in this bladed stance that, and he doesn't really have a lot of good leverage in some of his punches, and he's always looking like he's about to tip over. So if you go and watch Prograis fight, notice that on the closer range, mid or close range exchanges, He's throwing combos from the same bladed stance while he's so close to his opponent. And because he never squares up, he he looks like he's about to tip over. So even if his opponent doesn't land clean, maybe he might throw, his opponent might throw a flurry and land on his arms. He looks like he's about to tip over. Okay. Especially when his opponent is like stepping around him, and it takes a little while to pivot and follow his opponent. You know what I mean? Like a guy like a Lomachenko, for example, would would dominate him on the inside. You know what I mean? Because he kind of just doesn't, he just stays in that bladed stance, and he takes a while to follow his opponent when they're stepping around him. You know what I mean? Um, Again, he's not getting, for a guy that's a puncher, he's giving away that advantage he has while fighting on the inside. Again, he can handle himself on the inside, but I don't think it's his strength. You know what I mean? Um, he would need to be better on the inside for this fight because Jack is hard to deal with on the outside. All right. Um, so yeah, Regis Prograis, good long range fighter, but when he's dealing with someone that's on the outside, it's a lot of work for him to get in. You know what I mean? He's not good at cutting off the ring. He kind of follows his opponents around. You know what I mean? And we've seen it in his last couple of fights. Devin Haney didn't really have to move too much, but Devin Haney is quick enough to, throw his 1-2 and get right out of danger and stay right out of danger. And Jack Catterall is that same kind of fighter, you know. And once Regis feels like he's being forced to initiate and he starts walking straight in, that's when he starts to get clubbed more in the head on his way in. You know what I mean? And that's when his opponent will start picking him apart. And that's when I saw in the Zaria fight. Zaria for a very safety fight. I thought Zaria didn't win the fight. I did think he won. I think he didn't get the knockdown that he had didn't score. I mean, I didn't like Zaria, but I also will sit here and tell you, like, I don't think Prograis won the fight, you know. And Devin Haney won every round, all right, and knocked him down. Josh Taylor was close because Josh Taylor wasn't really outboxing him on the outside. He had a exchange with him on the inside and made it physical. Similar to what he had to do with Victor Postal years ago when Josh Taylor fought him. And the same thing with Jack Catterall. Jack Catterall was winning on the outside. Josh Taylor just started to be more physical on the inside, you know. Um, but this fight here, I think Jack Catterall is going to be an issue for Regis Prograis. Oh, one last point. I seen an open workout of Regis Prograis last week. I think it was sometime before the fight with Tibzul. There was some sort of open workout. I know it wasn't a week of the fight, but it was an open workout that I was looking at. And I noticed that Regis was showing improvements in his footwork. Like it looked like he was moving a lot more quickly. I think that's probably something he might have been working on um, in his camp. You know, I don't know if it's gonna work for him here in this fight here, uh, but it could. It could be a thing. So that's something that I did notice. So as much as I talk about him having slow feet, don't be surprised if Regis is a little bit more improved in that area. All right, because I did see that open workout. I did notice that he was moving a lot more fluid and stuff in that open workout. He looked better. So, as far as my prediction, I think Jack Carroll is definitely gonna outbox him for a good amount of time. Regis is gonna score here and there, but I think he's gonna have problems dealing with Jack Catterall's jab. Jack has a very good jab, and Jack is very difficult to get to in the earlier rounds. And in the earlier rounds, when his defense is tight, even when you get in on him, he's gonna be rolling a lot of those punches. A lot of those punches are not gonna land clean, because he's very slippery. So I could say that I think Jack is gonna be outboxing Regis from the outside. They're both southpaws again, and I think Regis looks better against other southpaws. All right, but I think Jack is gonna be with his leg and his movement and his jab. He's gonna be hard to get to. But as the fight goes on, I'm expecting Regis to be a little bit more aggressive. Um, I think he's gonna do well in some of the exchanges on the inside. Um, but I don't think it's gonna be enough to give him enough rounds. I just think Jack, what he showed me in that rematch against Josh Taylor, is that he's willing to trade and that he's willing to you know, uh, initiate a little bit and go on the attack and not just be a defender. And I see Jack Catterall winning this because on the outside, when it's going to be a pot shotting type of fight, he wins because he's just better at, controlling range and stuff like that. But on the inside, I just don't think Regis is good enough to be able to like beat Jack Catterall on points when it comes to that area. I think he might have his moments, but enough to win, I don't know. Even if he improves a little bit in his fight, I'm still leaning towards Jack Catterall to win. Um, Regis has a puncher's chance, so don't be surprised if he catches Jack and hurt him with a good shot or even drop him. Um, but Jack, even though he's not a huge puncher, he still was able to drop Josh Taylor. He was still able to hurt him in a rematch, and I think that Regis Prograis has shown he got dropped by Devin Haney and unofficially got dropped by Danielito Saria. So don't be surprised if Regis gets dropped at some point in this fight too. But overall, I have to go with Jack Catterall. I know he's the favorite here. I'm rooting for Regis Prograis because I'm more of a fan of him as a boxing fan. But when we're talking about predictions, I think Jack Catterall wins the fight. I just think he's just more fundamentally sound. He's sharper. He's fresher. And he's just so good at controlling distance. And I think he's going to give Regis Prograis all kinds of trouble in that area. All right. So anyway, that's my breakdown of the fight. Please let me know what you guys think in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And hit the thumbs up, share the video, all that stuff. I will see you guys on the next video. Have a good day.